So it's actually unparalleled in regards to how much men actually truly suffer. And when a man actually begins to awaken to the truth of his reality, it's one hell of a painful process. One hell of a painful process. And the level and the magnitude in which men suppress their emotions, it actually destroys the physical body, destroys the mental health, and just amplifies the emotional state to the point where the emotional pain or the accumulation actually completely overwhelms men. And this is often seen in anger, and how quick a man's anger switch can flip, and then how dangerous a man actually becomes when he's angry. And this is why we find so much violence on the planet, and violence especially amongst men, because anger is a way in which men are processing and dealing with their emotional trauma in the most unhealthiest ways. And I've come out of this. I don't know what it feels like to be angry anymore, but I know the residue of it. I know where the anger comes from, where the trauma is actually coming from in a man. And until he begins to address his emotional aspects of himself, he will continue to plough his physical health into the ground. Now, the reason for this is because trauma is actually stored in the cells of the body. And so if you look at most men, they're carrying physical bodies that are actually compacted and dense full of trauma, hence creating constant states of stress, constant states of worry, constant states of anxiety. And so constant is this state in a man of stress and worry that he has to continuously escape it. So men formulate escape routes, and them escape routes are always selfish in nature, because they are there to self-soothe, to relieve the man of his emotional pain. And then we become so focused on these ways in which we self-soothe, on these ways in which we escape, on these addictions, bad habits. We become so focused on them that literally a man's attention and a man's focus is focused specifically on those things, on those ways of being. And then because a man finds relief through them things, that relief gives him a sense of feeling good, because through the relief he feels better about himself. And so then a man becomes focused and addicted to finding that relief, thinking that his relief, or he's actually making him feel good, is actually improving his life in some kind of way. But in fact it's actually a full-on avoidance way of being. But we become so attached to it that we must have it. We can't let go of it. It almost becomes it becomes a love externalized from ourselves. It becomes an external love. It becomes an attachment. We begin to love it because we simply need it to feel better about ourselves. And for me, this is something I dealt with 15 years of addiction and steroid addiction, drinking, smoking, cocaine, that constant focus on that, or the constant focus on escaping into the future, because I was feeling a lot of lack. I was experiencing a lot of lack in my life, and so I was always focused on when I'm going to make it, or when life's going to be good. But the scary thing is, or the thing that I've come to realize now, is actually behind that was a whole nother reality, a whole side of myself that I wasn't fully aware of. In fact, that I had little actual knowledge of, because my whole energy was focused in how to escape it. But through my own process and everything that I've gone through, life shook me up to actually begin to see this. And then it's like, wow, it's like really seeing how I truly feel about myself. And for a man, how a man truly feels about himself is beneath the surface of the bravado, the way that a man presents himself, beneath the surface of the masculinity and the hardness and the toughness and the false mask that men put on. It's just an absolute overwhelming immense amount of shame, of unworthiness, of rejection, of aloneness. And this really, the aloneness at the very core wounding is the aloneness. But when you see this, when you begin to recognise this core wound in a man of aloneness, and then you begin to see how your external life is, or how your later life is, you begin to see that you're living in a whole bubble of aloneness. Like when this shit really begins to resonate, when this begins to when you really begin to see this, and you begin to recognise the pain of it, it's life changing, it's life altering. And I had to recognise that my adult life, I was actually still reflecting this pure aloneness. Wasn't open to anybody, wasn't able to communicate, wasn't actually serving anybody other than serving myself. It was always myself first. It's always me first. Me. How can I feel better today? And I think that's something that all men find, is that aloneness, that you feel like you've got to do everything on your own. You feel like you can't actually be interdependent on other people because you can't trust nobody. Men have deep trust issues. We're not actually open. We're actually deeply shut off and deeply suppressed and deeply disconnected from other people. And for a man to really open, we have to go through why we're closed. We have to even begin to recognise that we're closed. Most men can't even recognise that they're closed off. This is how so deeply ingrained in men it is that we're blindsided in states of denial about how we even really feel. Because that's just like, I can't touch this. I can't even go into that. Like, I refuse to even acknowledge that. But here's the thing, it's like when you don't acknowledge that, your life sucks. It sucks because it's so disconnected. It sucks because there's no life outside of what you're using to feel better about yourself. It sucks because your life ain't everything that you know that it can be. Like, it sucks when you're avoiding trauma. Your life fucking sucks because every day it's that battle, it's that need to escape, it's that selfish desire to feel better. And that's a fucking hard way to be. To be able to live without trusting a single other person is a hard way to be. It's a hard life to live. That needing to feel better about yourself, that stuck in addiction, that stuck in avoidance, the same repetitive patterns over and over again, the same things, the same actions, the same day, relived over and over and over and over and over again. That's a life half lived. That's not even a life half lived. That's a life quarter lived. And to fill that void in yourself where you are empty, where you are missing something. And so when I decided to do Men and Emotions, I really wanted to just bring this to light. Like, to really bring this to light, to begin to see it. Because when you begin to see it, you can begin to change it. And when you begin to change it, something happens. The more you stop suppressing trauma, you begin to release it. You begin to purge it. You begin to get it out of your body. You begin to release it all from your cells, all of that emotion, all of that pain. You begin to cry. And what actually happens is, as you begin to release it, you begin to get lighter. You begin to feel better. You begin to feel more love in yourself. You begin to feel more harmony in yourself. You become softer. You become more gentle. You become more innocent. You become more sweet. You become more lovable. You become more loving in yourself. And then when you start to reach people on this level, when you begin to harmonize with what you was before, because you was never trauma in the first place. You see, you was never ever trauma. You never had the only time you become traumatized in your life is when you began to suppress it, when you begin to numb yourself from it, when you begin to build a life of trying to escape it. But beneath that trauma, there is that sweet, 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 sweet innocence, that sweet, pure like state of just being authentic, of just being natural, of not trying to pretend, just allowing that natural beauty, that natural essence to come through you. To actually return yourself back to that state, to that loving state where you're able to be in harmony with yourself, you're able to be in harmony with other people, you're able to truly love a woman without having the need to sexualize her, or having the need to own her, or having the need to fucking control and possess her, and all of the unhealthy ways that men find themselves. You don't need to carry yourself in some masculine bravado thinking you're the next best things since fucking King Kong. Like, just letting all that shit go, letting it all go, and just actually being who you are. Just absolutely being who you was always meant to be. To be able to stand up and go, do you know what, I'm gonna do what's right for the next person because I do what's right for myself. I'm gonna do what's right for the world because I do what's right for myself. Not walking around kicking off with people, having a good punch up on a Friday night, or just being so focused on drug addiction that you can't actually serve anybody else or do anything for anybody else. I mean, this is the life that I come from. This is the background that I come from. Self-serving, addictive addict, because I wasn't able to deal with how I felt. Because I was so in denial of how I felt that I wasn't even aware of what I was doing. I wasn't even aware of how I was living my life. All I know is just that my life sucked and that it wasn't how I wanted it to be. And actually, there's no empowerment in any of that. You only find the empowerment when you begin to build the self-strength to actually look at yourself, to actually be accountable for how you feel and stop expressing that shit onto the world and onto everybody else. Because there's no true power in any of that. There's not a real man, a man that's expressing himself in an unhappy way, or a man that's expressing himself in a negative way is not a real man. I don't know how we can look at men and we go, oh well, you know, that's a tough man over there. That's a tough man, yeah, but a tough man never done anything good for nobody. A tough man only ever was tough because he couldn't be soft, because he didn't have enough strength in himself to deal with his own issues. So it's like Men and Emotions, it's like really just, it's giving men an opportunity to say, look, there's a better way of being. There's a better life out there for you. There's a life where you can co-create. There's a life where you can have love, where you can have connection, where you can have abundance, where you can actually have an authentic life, where you're actually serving other people, because in truth, serving other people is what lights people up. Being able to connect with a woman and truly loving a woman is what begins to light a man up. Being able to provide safety and containment for a woman to actually blossom without constricting her and contracting her and sucking the life out of her because a man's too insecure about himself. It's incredible. It's incredible what a man is capable of when he is able to start seeing what he's incapable of dealing with now. And that's what Men and Emotions is about. And that's the next step in men. This is the next step. I'm not talking about some fairy tale kind of idea. I'm talking about the next evolutionary step in a man's beings to really embodiment the love that he truly is. But he isn't able to recognize it because he's too in resistance to his pain. When it's the love, it's the core that takes him through the pain. And it's the love and the core of him that comes back, that he begins to express again into this world. Anyway, I don't know where that come from. This kind of video just felt like it wanted to come up, so express it. But there's so much more to a man than the mask. So much more to the man. Men are incredible. Men are incredibly beautiful when they recognise that beauty within themselves. Anyway, to the next one, much love.